Welcome everyone to the 40th Health Teaching Workshop of the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute. It's Tuesday, September 22nd, 2015, and we have Mr. Keshe there at the Spaceship Institute, and he'll direct.
One of the things was just before we start, Marco was asking me a question, and I said maybe we can address it. As you know, one of the members of the Keshe Foundation at the moment is sick. When we think, if we are right, hope we're wrong. He's been receiving a large dosage of all sorts of things being in the wrong zone in the world. And what Marco asked me is, can we help him with like CO2? This is what we started, and his wish is to be able to make it because he thinks himself, as a member of the core members, he will be needing it. And in so many ways, modern warfare has a solution or not. This is something we should not be addressing, but this is something maybe we have to address. What we need to address is that we have a situation now in Fukushima, we have a situation now in Iraq, where nuclear materials are freely in the environment. One is due to accident and one due to the war. And in the past few weeks, we received all kinds of reports that in Syria, these kind of weapons have been used. But be it nuclear, be it biochemical, be it totally chemical material contamination, not necessarily in the war, is the solution to the GANs or plasma technology for these kind of problems. So the question is, can we use the plasma technology for change of the condition in these contaminations? So the problem is twofold. One is what has been delivered by the entity, by the chemical, by biological, or by nuclear. What was delivered? What material was delivered, or combination of materials delivered that their effect on the GANs of the body is as such that the GANs of the body cannot control it, cannot hold it. It's too much energy delivered in one time. What has been seen but effectively kept away from public is what we call effect of any of these nuclear, biochemicals, or biological or nuclear is not so much on the man himself, but is on subspecies, like parasites, like worms. And then the man, by all sorts of accidents, takes these into his body, and then what happens? Now we have a mutation in animal, which in this mutation arriving in the body of the man behaves totally than what we knew before. This is a very hidden technology from the front of science pages because it's so much that we don't know. It is known as biochemical nuclear parasites. what happens is in the war zones or in an explosion nuclear condition, the combination of three in the environment affects the creatures in the environment. We've seen in Ukraine over 20 odd years now of what we saw in Chernobyl has created new type of plantation and new kind of animals with not deformity, but a new structure. If these large animals or trees or plants have been affected, what about the parasites? What about the small animals? They stand a bigger chance of change. And then our body is not ready for it. And this is one of the biggest problems which has been kept away from public because we know nothing about it. We don't know how to handle it. A harmless parasite, through the interaction in entering the body of the man in the digestion system, brings a different behavior, different energy release. And this is something which most of what we see, for example, American soldiers which are coming back from the war zones suffer from side effects of different chemicals. There is a study is that these guys, some of them have this disease, this structure of the biochemical nuclear parasite. You get bitten by a mosquito, you get malaria. These are new mutations that our body is not ready for, and sometimes it takes weeks and months to show itself. Now, one of the Keshe Foundation members of the core team is in this situation. Or we think he's in this situation. He's been in the environment, and we're trying to find out if we can help him. And what Marco just raised, the question, can we use CO2 for him? We already started the process this morning in trying to see if we can interfere with the process. Would it affect psychological or the physical side? This is not the only thing. In a space, we will face these kind of things drastically. Matter changes without us knowing and carries structure in a plasma that our body cannot tolerate. How do we find out where it affects, where it sits? Does it touch the liver? Would it sit in your brain, or would it sit in your kidney? And once you're right, how do we extract it? How do we neutralize it? Like the way you put the pen on the skin. Can we produce different kind of pen with different than copper that matches the strength of the parasite? In a space, you have to be aware more of this than these two. These two are part of the state of matter. This sits in two borders, both matter and a plasma. In the present knowledge, we only handle this, and we haven't barely understood nuclear. Can addition of CO2, as we had in the Spanish lesson, on the brace of a man, be able to change the position of this? Or would, by addition of more energy, we cause more problem? Or do we bring a balance? This is one of the parts which we have to face in the coming times more and more. In fact, if you think of it, it's very simple. In nuclear explosions, like Fukushima, nuclear reaction starts the chain of chemical reaction when their interaction can create a new biological connections and then new entity. And this new entity could be in plasmatic condition or could be in matter state or what you call radiation. But somewhere in there, the biological comes through an animal too. It's not actually creating a biological warfare, it's the amount of energy which is released by these two into a body of a subspecies can create the same problem as actually becoming a biological new diseases. Can we use the plasma to change these? We know, as you're aware, we announced in the past few weeks that the use of the new plasma technology, if it's used in masses, can feed down the nuclear reactors and it has to be protected. Some nations, we think, are listening to the call. We don't know the reason, but as some of you know, if it's true the report, the Swiss government is decommissioning or shutting down all the nuclear reactors. We don't know if this is true, but it is. It means they understand the position. Don't forget, the new energy system in Italy will put pressure straight away on north of Italy into Switzerland. Now, the position is, how much can we change? And in a space, if we meet the same replication, what can we do? You have created, through new reactors. Even we've seen it in the recent few past weeks. Coming reports from different people. For example, the Chinese Keshe Foundation, who are working on the fat boys, how they see new materials in the fat boys. They're asking, what are they? Some of it is themselves creating it, but some of them lead, because of the new conditions, to creation of new entities, new structures. Not necessarily living, it could be chemical, it could be biological, it could be a new source of radiation. But how do we handle these in a space? Leaving it to you is a dilemma. Leaving it to me is nothing, is not important. Because if you create a plasma reactor which has a barrier limit between the structure of the man body, which means anything over it and under it will not go through it, is absorbed by it. One of the reasons, if you look at the structure of the reactor control, if you remember what we showed, the one which Marco made with the rings, one of the reasons for loading this in the center and loading this in the center is to keep this boundary. A minimum and a maximum what you can accept in magnetical and gravitational. If you understand the position of your system control in this structure, then you can stop a lot of what we call plasmatic fields which come into space in converting to becoming diseases and others. Because when you're in a space, in your spaceship, you're no different than a fat boy. You receive radiation, part of it harmful, part of it is the structure which you need. It's the same as here. If you go back to some of the lectures I've given a couple of years ago, and I repeated it before, is that if you look, part of your cancer is created psychologically. Part of it is created by the environment. And part of it is due to what we call Darwin effect, evolution. So this environmental effect, with the radiations which come from space, the radiation which comes from the inside decay of the materials from the planet itself, can lead to a lot of new conditions. So how do we extract these? We have to understand this. We have to understand how we can use understanding of a plasma to reduce the effect of environmental radiation, which can lead to biological and chemical change in the body of the man, that it can lead to diseases, can be sorted. How do you do it? How you bracket it? In positioning two rings, and mixture of the material in the two rings gives the boundary expectation of the body of the man. You limit it to man because this is what you need. But when you go to space and you get another creature to come into you, meet you, or you come across, this boundary of the field, the strength could be way over critical to him. That's what we said from the beginning. If you remember, you never enter in a space in somebody else's domain. Your spaceship is your domain, their spaceship is their domain. We meet in the environment which is balanced for both of us. You never invite one on board. Not because you're afraid of it, because you're correct, you might kill him. Or you might give him some diseases from yourself. If you find a position where he is happy with, you are happy with, that's where you meet. The existence of man in a space has to be a peaceful transition time. It has to be understood, not just what's good for you, is what is good for everyone concerned. It does not matter irrespective of origin of the creation. So how do you handle it? How do we, at this moment of time, can help a large number of people with this kind of problems, or in a space? The easiness of it is that you create a very strong plasma field, and within the plasma field, you create another plasma field. What do? You create a boundary that one field absorbs and one field rejects. Means you deliberately create gravitational in one of your reactors and magnetical in another reactor. Then you set and you change the third reactor and you rotate the rotation of the fields without ever touching the top reactor. That, in this case, if there is any field changes, is removed from the environment of the reactors, the living quarters, to the base. This is essential. This is part of the fundamental, what you call decontamination. The decontamination in a space is not going and washing the wall and using bleach and God knows what. The decontamination in a space is understanding the work of the plasma, that you can remove plasmas which are not within the structure. So, if you have a spaceship like this is the living quarters, and you have the reactors like this, it's no use using your boundary reactors to pull them to the side. What you got to do, you create, as I said, to extract the fields which are not needed in the lower part, and then you choose the third reactor to rotate to reduce the strength or reject the fields into outside. That's the only way you can literally clean the craft from unwanted energies. There is no other way. You cannot go and wash and change the field strength in every corner. But this, due to the interaction of the fields, will interact, and you find, as I said, an interaction and a rejection. So as you interact, you reject, and you empty the platform. Can we do the same with the body of the man in a case of biochemical nuclear condition? Yes, it can be done. It's fairly difficult at this moment, but considering it is very easy to. You can use the same combination as we've seen with the Chinese system in placing 3 reactors and combining the 2, that the third one creates ejection. As much as with a Chinese system, you can put the bottles around to give, you can put bottles around to attract. The extraction is not in one way. It's not that you send, as you see in this unit, it's not that you, what do you call it, only feed when you need it. You can extract it too. It's what the Chinese call yin and yang. You've got to understand which one you're taking, what you're giving. So in space technology, do not go and buy bleach in the space. There is no bleach. And there is no alcohol to disinfect. So you got to learn the process of a space biological cleaning for the physical part of the body of the man. And it has a specific spectrum. And once you see it in that spectrum, anything above it or below it, or in its interaction to create it to go above and below, can be eliminated. You can get rid of all diseases. What it goes back to, it's what we said, the magnet. I had a bunch of magnets with me. I was playing with it. I don't know where I left it. It seems you too been playing with it. One says the other one says, no, it's the other one. So where have you put it, you two? He's checking his pocket. You don't know where you put it? Okay, no problem. Now we don't have any more magnets. Okay, so now I don't know, you telling me. We got to find it, so it doesn't matter. We got plenty of magnets. It's just it would have been nice to show something. Maybe I took it down. So it comes to the point that how do we do? How do you extract fields? And how, once you come to understand this field of strength exists in the environment you are, how do you add it to the strength of your boundary magnetic field that it creates a barrier for this disease? You cannot run your reactors continuously. You use very much like a DNA. Embed the disease in the walls of your craft. In your reactors, you embed the information of the strength that you know this could be, and as your skin of your craft is made out of the interaction of the fields, once you embed it in this ring, in this core, it gets embedded in the structure. It's very easy. The way you put CO2 in the bottle, and then you put, God knows, sugar in it, and you can transfer it or other entities, is the same. Once the 3 reactors are embedded with a specific strength, that specific strength becomes part of the physical structure. So it becomes part of the barrier. Embedding of information in gravitational magnetic field is one of the most essential ways in space travel. You cannot keep on changing, as I said, the wall of the craft. But as you have built the craft boundary through gravitational magnetic field strength of the reactors, once you change it, they change too. So in time, for example, when you go through the mass plasma zones of the universe or a galaxy, you predict the strength of this and you embed it in your reactors. And then what happened when you come to it, because is this plus its own original strength, you never get diluted. Embedding is part of the technology. And once you embed, you keep, you do not withdraw. Because then you can have a flow back in. This is one of the problems with the plasma technology. That if you create a condition and your body used to get to that condition because now is not embedding only there, this was created by the interaction of these, it gets embedded in every cell of your body. We see this, and you will hear quite a lot about this, especially when we deliver the energy systems, as I said yesterday. Once you start creating a demand, you cannot withdraw the demand unless you find another position to retract the demand back to itself. We got it? Okay, we'll see. One of the points in the health application in the space is to understand the totality of not what elements, but what magnetic fields and gravitational fields have been used to create a condition. Once you have these, then to be safe, you make strength by a factor usually of a 10 above that strength. Don't forget, factor of 10 is quite a lot in the plasma of the matter. If this is this, plasma of 10 is here, that's good enough. In the new systems which we are showing, we will show very soon, now we can dictate the order of the magnitude very easily. So, for example, you can go to the speed of light faster by the order of magnitude by simply, as you know, to go further up in the strength. You're going at the speed of light, at this speed, at this point, you go by speed of light at this point 10,000 times faster. You don't do anything. You just choose a higher strength gravitational magnetic field. But because you embed that in the 3 reactors, which the 4th one is already decided by itself, you allow the whole physicality of the body of the man within the craft to work at this level. So you don't have fasten your seat belt and lay back and put your tables away. It does not exist. Because you are within the structure and you are always constantly with the same speed. This is one of the first things a lot of you, once experiencing, starting playing with the plasma for motion, will realize. That is no fuel, is change of a strength. Some of you will go like this, Armand will go for this. Am I correct? This, we do not know. I think you got to add a few zeros here. Maybe. So this is what you got to realize. This is how, the same way as you increase a higher order and you implant it in the 3 base reactors, you dictate the field forces in conjunction with the 4th one of the environment, then the plasma of the body of the man automatically moves to that level. So to you, inside the craft, you're still at normality. Nobody falls and nobody stands up and nobody gets dizzy. Embedding is part of the space technology development that you will find out this is too low, so it'll never count. This is on the border because some materials work in a plasma condition. The space technology in the plasma has a lot of advantages, and one of them is this how to use the strength of the plasma, developing a system that you dictate the strength, and then you decide where you go. And at the moment, the second you have decided on this strength here, and you embed it, which becomes the creation of all the fields which build the whole craft itself, you work on a new dimension, plus including yourself. It's easy. It's absolutely so easy that it will create mayhem for a lot of people. In a space, remember, there are no microbes. Does not exist. It's impossibilities. Extremely rare. In space, you have plenty of viruses, because viruses are energy packs which affect and touch your body. In space, there is no radiation. Absolutely zero. Radiation is an attribute of interaction of matter state. The rest in the space is gravitational or magnetical. So you don't have the microbes and you don't have the radiation if and when you work in a confine of the plasma. The only way you handle the viruses is to find out their strength before they attach themselves to amino acid of the man to become microbes, to change the structure of the amino acid that you might call them a microbe, but still they have a virus attachment, so you still treat them like what they call it, the virus. Virus in the space technology is just a packet of energy. That's why you cannot touch viruses with any antibiotic. If the doctors treat the conditions of a virus infections with plasma and GANs, you will see the change in no time, instantaneously, because you give to them what they live off, they operate. Viruses operate on gravitational magnetic fields, and you put a GANs to it. This is why they tell you, you have a virus infection, sorry, there is no antibiotic. Antibiotic level is only effective at the microbe level. If you deal with viruses, which is connect themselves to the microbes, and they call themselves viruses, just bring yourself in touch with the GANs of any GANs. You will find out, it will give you an immediate result. Because you enter, you interact very much the same as the pen and the pain. Because it's of the same strength inside the body, interacts very correctly. Next time you get a virus infection, try CO2 gas. Let us know how effective it is. And you say it works on it, because now you understand scientifically why and the reason for it. Cover a tissue, as we've seen with Renin, with a gas of CO2, and if it's a muscle infection, whatever, with a copper oxide for a few seconds, for a few minutes. There will be no more virus infection. You have to understand, as I keep on telling you, the totality, not just the physicality. Do not look for a physical outlooks of how it looks, but understand how the condition was created that it led to that position. The spaceship technology health is as easy as drinking water. If you know how to drink the water, if you drink it the wrong way, it goes to the other hole and it can kill you. But if you understand how it works, it's so easy, because it's only one thing you need to deal with, and that's the plasma. Find out how two plasmas interact and where they interact, at what strength they interact. That's all you need to do. No more, no less. And then you decide where you want to move this. You want to move the strength here to be out of interaction, or you want to introduce it this way at a higher strength. If you go back on the system, did you take your system back downstairs again, Marco? You're so stingy, we can't share nothing, huh? We imagine if we have this system here. These are the cores. This is the second ring. These are the other cores, 12 of them. Whatever. You create a condition for yourself to increase or decrease. If you remember, Marco had this little thing, is like a clockwork on it, to increase at the higher strength, to go higher in gravitational field or go higher on the magnetical field. And because you choose this one and you embed it, you decide where the interaction is. Is there going to be interaction with the virus or not? If you go in and increase the gravitational strength, but reduce the magnetical, then what will happen? How would the virus interact? Would it look for a bigger space to move, or would it retract and separate itself by positioning itself in a different position? You don't destroy nothing in a space. You find a way to position it different way. You do not go with the habit of man to kill. You find a way, in a way, to increase the distance that the field is weaker than being closer like this. Because the further you position the plasma, the more interactions with other plasmas it has, that when it enters the body, it's weaker. So it does not create the damage, or displacement, or change of the combination. Any questions?
Just looking here, Mr. Kesh. Not seeing any.
You don't see any question, means nobody understood.
viewers that have a question, you can raise your hand and then I can allow you to speak. You have to know how the rules go here in this.
You are very, very faint, Rick. We can't hear you.
Okay, I will try to speak more directly into the computer. I'm just reminding people that they can raise their hands and then I can promote you to a panelist where you can speak then. I see there is a hand raised with Sandy. I'll promote you to a panelist and you can speak.
Sandy,
Okay.
Here we are.
you awake?
Yes.
She usually falls asleep at this time of the day. Am I correct?
Third time.
You're always about 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock, nods up. Now, you can ask your question.
Oh yeah. When you have a
Sound
virus,
a little bit louder, you're very faint.
you originally said something about if you can make the system before the virus attaches. Preventative medicine, I guess. All of a sudden, I'm thinking, would that be because in order to get the virus then to sort of leave, you would have a process of actually energizing the virus and actually giving it more strength, sort of swelling it until it has to can't fit in its space any longer?
Can you explain yourself?
Well, I'm thinking when we have, okay, if a
This
virus...
is the problem. When you start thinking, you start getting worried.
Okay. Yeah, Bill says get used to it.
Okay.
When the virus has attached itself, and you are now in the process of using the plasma to get the virus to move on, so to speak, to find another position somewhere else. Okay. You know, the other side of the fence all of a sudden looks better. Is the process sort of, is it just a pooling process? I'm also thinking that there's sort of a prodding element. That's the yin and the yang.
No, it's accommodating. It's accommodation. You accommodate, position each other in respect to each other. You don't push it, you don't shove it, you don't get his hand and pull it out. You create a condition. Most probably, the easiest way is to create. Let me explain to you something which it'll be very interesting for you lot to learn. This applies both in the health and both in the space motion and travel. It's not single-handedly. Remember, one entity in respect to another. Each entity is made of a plasma, which the physical structure becomes part of it, that you don't even see it. And in this process, when you have a plasma, you have both gravitational and magnetical. Somewhere gravitational, magnetical point here, balance is the point of tangibility. So now this becomes what we said, the surface of the entity. That's the point where they interact. So what you have is gravitational, and what you have here is magnetic. The same story sits on this side of the fence. When you draw it, then you see this is the strength, which gives you the magnetical and gravitation. But there is a game to this to play. In a space technology, when you want to travel from this position to this position, you can play it two-way. You can tune your gravitational magnetic field only to magnetical field, which brings you in. So what you do? You tune your magnetical equal to the magnetical field of this guy. So by doing that, you're already on a path to the gravitational to be pulled in. Don't forget, your magnetical becomes the gravitational of the other entity. Then you decide in which strength of your magnetical you want to move in respect to this one magnetical. And at that point, you decide the speed of travel. Hundreds of times, thousands of times faster than the speed of light, because, don't forget, the matter state which dictated the speed of light for this planet is here. But for this planet, sits somewhere inside. So you decide in, because now you force the gravitational field to release more of magnetical to give you the balanced speed on here. It's a very tricky. If you understand it, if you understood this, you will find out this is what I said yesterday. What point is a point of division where you become a magnetical and you change to gravitation. Because if you take this gravitational, you are by order of magnitude thousands of times stronger than this order of magnitude. Because if this is the south pole of the planet, which creates the interaction, from here to get to here before you enter, you have entered millions of more interactions and you're much weaker. So understand this very carefully. And if you understand this, change the planetary to viruses, to infections. You create a repulsion by releasing part of the energy that satisfies this, because once in a virus you fed its gravitational, it has to release its magnetical, which does not match yours, you find without any problem separation of the disease. In technical terms, we call it saturation. You saturate it with a higher strength, and by order, if you understood, if this was a planet, I miss this cleaning up when it comes to the new board. You can't clean it up like this. So, magnetically goes, gravitationally goes in, and magnetically comes out stronger, because it absorbs the fields within the structure of the planet. It's the same field, because if you leave it, part of it feeds itself, and part of it receives more from outside. If you have looked at when you made the beads, I've explained this before, you put a stick there, you have a bead which goes back down, and then you have a bead which links up to the next core. This bead backing down is your magnetical that constantly keep a constant pressure on the field. That's your point of reference. And you take from here to the next entity. So the fields which are not used by this line can be fed back to get. It's a conservation of magnetic field. And all the planets exist through the same way. If you look at the Earth and look at the structure of the gravitational magnetic field of the Earth, if you have this, you have the fields which come in, and you have the fields which go out, and some of the fields you see feed back. You need this, otherwise the sun or the Earth loses plasma in a very fast way. So this conservation is part of the field which is released, which is the strength of itself, is pulled back by the gravitational field in it. If you understand this, you understand this simple understanding, that the reason you're attracted to this planet is because of your fields matching to it, and no other way. Earth hasn't put a string on you holding you. Your gravitational magnetic field of the total mass of your body, which carries COH3, Mr. Cohen, plus the iron and plus anything else, is embedded in this structure. So you always go back to be connected to it. You have a loop of infinity. That's what gravity is. Now you understand. So you created it. You became from the hydrogen and oxygen of the upper atmosphere as Mr. Cohen, and then you attach yourself to the iron to become red-blooded. So now you found a common denominator field of interaction. You are always gravitated to it. You cannot miss it, because you made a link. It's part of you. That's what gravity is. There's nothing magic, and there's no string on your toe. You have established by birth a connection between the elements with a common denominator, gravitational magnetic field. So it's your infinity loop. It's your blood connection with the planet. And have you seen, when you made the CO2 box and you added a little bit of iron to it, it turned up to be red. So this little guy, that little metal few atoms of iron, gave to you the link to the motherland. Because it's not matter state, it is a GANS state. And the plasma of the planet is in state of GANS. That's what it gives you. Then you still have the copper, and then you have the others. So what do they say? The white man can't jump, because the minute you jump, it brings you back. It leaves you in a state of connection. It's a very interesting point. You watch a movie, I don't know if you watched it. Have you watched the movie? The basketball game is called the white man can't jump. Yeah? Has a lot of meaning in science. Why do we see different cultures can jump more or less? It's nothing to do with the thing. It's to do with what they carry in respect they can reject themselves from the planet. The looseness and the tightness. So I might have answered you, Sam and Cindy, but I don't know.
Yes.
You're still awake.
Well, yeah, and it did. So the virus would sort of go through an increase in energy. And that was sort of my question. I wasn't sure if it would just keep its same strength and leave, or if it would first increase in strength and then sort of find a better home.
It could be any of the two. It depends how you position it or how you want to position it. Maybe what is virus to you in the lung can be a fantastic energy for the liver. What is a virus in the brain could be the best solution for breast cancer. Is how and where you want to put it, and where the interaction has taken place.
I must say, I didn't think about it that way.
Now you can. You're
Yes.
going to be the first spaceship astronaut woman, or Bojans we call them, captain.
That's an interesting, yes, I see the flip side now.
Okay, any other question? You see, I don't tell you this is it and this is sacrosanct and has to be. I give you always a room for you to develop the knowledge in the way you see it. And that's how, when you start teaching in the future as teachers, some of you have already started, that's how you translate and transfer the knowledge. You always leave room for addition of thought in them, in your students, to be able to analyze according to their understanding and come to their own conclusion. Then you have served yourself as a teacher, because the teachers who stand with the what I call iron fist are the teachers who have no knowledge. Do we need to come back to the pharmaceuticals on Earth to find a solution? Or, on the other hand, do you think in the future the pharmaceuticals, when they have a problem, send it to space to solve it first much faster than back on Earth? Because we'll find new solutions in different ways. And we have to find new solutions, because the present solutions have not brought much answers. In so many ways, it created more problems. These guys, some of them, have this disease, this structure of the biochemical nuclear parasite. You get bitten by a mosquito, you get malaria. These are new mutations that our body is not ready for, and sometimes it takes weeks and months to show itself. Now, one of the Keshe Foundation members of the core team is in this situation. Or we think he's in this situation. He's been in the environment, and we're trying to find out if we can help him. And what Marco just raised, is a question: can we use CO2 for him? We already started the process this morning in trying to see if we can interfere with the process. Will it affect psychological or the physical side? This is not the only thing. In a space, we will face these kind of things drastically. Matter changes without us knowing and carries structure in a plasma that our body cannot tolerate. How do we find out where it affects, where it sits? Does it touch the liver? Would it sit in your brain, or would it sit in your kidney? And once you're right, how do we extract it? How do we neutralize it? Like the way you put the pen on the skin. Can we produce different kind of pen with different than copper that matches the strength of the parasite? In a space, you have to be aware more of this than these two. Now we have a mutation in animal, which in this mutation arriving in the body of the man behaves totally than what we knew before. This is a very hidden technology from the front of science pages because it's so much that we don't know. It is known as biochemical nuclear parasites. What happens is in the war zones or in an explosion nuclear condition, the combination of three in the environment affects the creatures in the environment. We've seen in Ukraine over 20-odd years now of what we saw in Chernobyl has created new type of plantation and new kind of animals with not deformity, but a new structure. If these large animals or trees or plants have been affected, what about the parasites? What about the small animals? They stand a bigger chance of change. And then our body is not ready for it. And this is one of the biggest problems which has been kept away from public because we know nothing about it. We don't know how to handle it. A harmless parasite, through the interaction in entering the body of the man in the digestion system, brings a different behavior, different energy release. And this is something which most of what we see, for example, American soldiers which are coming back from the war zones suffer from side effects of different chemicals. There is a study is that these two are part of the state of matter. This sits in two borders, both matter and a plasma. In the present knowledge, we only handle this, and we haven't barely understood nuclear. Can addition of CO2, as we had in the Spanish lesson, on the breast of a man, be able to change the position of this? Or would, by addition of more energy, we cause more problem? Or do we bring a balance? This is one of the parts which we have to face in the coming times more and more. In fact, if you think of it, it's very simple. In nuclear explosions, like Fukushima, nuclear reaction starts the chain of chemical reaction when their interaction can create a new biological connections and then new entity. And this new entity could be in plasmatic condition or could be in matter state or what you call radiation. But somewhere in there, the biological comes to an animal too. It's not actually creating a biological warfare, it's the amount of energy which is released by these two into a body of a subspecies can create the same problem as actually becoming a biological new diseases. Have been used. But be it nuclear, be it biochemical, be it totally chemical material contamination, not necessarily in the war, is the solution to the GANs or plasma technology for these kind of problems. So the question is, can we use the plasma technology for change of the condition in these contaminations? So the problem is twofold. One is what has been delivered by the entity, by the chemical, by biological, or by nuclear. What was delivered? What material was delivered, or combination of materials delivered that their effect on the gans of the body is as such that the gans of the body cannot control it, cannot hold it. It's too much energy delivered in one time. What has been seen but effectively kept away from public is what we call effect of any of these nuclear, biochemicals, or biological or nuclear is not so much on the man himself, but is on subspecies. Like parasites, like worms. And then the man, by all sorts of accidents, takes these into his body, and then what happens?
Welcome everyone to the 40th Health Teaching Workshop of the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute. It's Tuesday, September 22nd, 2015. And we have Mr. Keshe there at the Spaceship Institute, and he'll direct.
One of the things was just before we start, Marco was asking me a question, and I said maybe we can address it. As you know, one of the members of the Keshe Foundation at the moment is sick, and we think, if we are right, hope we are wrong. He's been receiving a large dosage of all sorts of things being in the wrong zone in the world. And what Marco asked me is, can we help him with like CO2? This is what we started, and his wish is to be able to make it because he thinks himself, as a member of the core members, he will be needing it. And in so many ways, modern warfare has a solution or not. This is something we should not be addressing, but this is something maybe we have to address. What we need to address is that we have a situation now in Fukushima, we have a situation now in Iraq, where nuclear materials are freely in the environment. One is due to accident and one due to the war. And in the past few weeks, we received all kinds of reports that in Syria, these kind of